Hello, my name is Connor.
And I'm Jason.
And you're listening to the Amazed and Perplexed podcast.
Well, last week, or last episode, we completed a run that we didn't necessarily intend to do, but it's just the way the text ran that we covered several chapters from John. If you're familiar with the Gospels, you know that Matthew, Mark, and Luke follow similar timelines, and John is like, I don't care. And he's a little bit all over. He does a lot of focusing on the last days of Jesus, and so that's more of an elongated part. But there are aspects that are in John, like the woman caught in adultery and things of that nature, the woman at the well, that aren't featured. And so John 9, which would be our next passage, and I think in the timeline would be probably where we'd go. It is a full-on long chapter, and so we thought we'd take a little break and slip over to Matthew, and everybody's like, who cares? But it's meaningful to me, so indulge me for a minute. We are going to look at Matthew 15. This is going to be fun. There is only John now to me. Matthew 15, beginning of verse 21, and we're focusing on a woman who is identified as a Canaanite woman. In other places, I remember Syrophoenician woman, non-Jew. And so I am curious, we're in Tyre and Sidon, so this isn't in the heart of Jerusalem. This is Jesus. This is some of the farther reaches that Jesus physically reached out to on his journeys, in his ministry. And so I am just curious, in our goal to give everyone dignity in many ways. It's him, his disciples, and the woman are the entirety of the, audience. And so looking around the room, I don't know if there's anything that pops into your mind that would be useful for us to be thinking about.
Yeah, I think it's helpful to remind ourselves kind of what story is taking place here. Because this is one of those things that I feel like it pops up all the time where somebody, usually like this happened all the time way in the past, a fairly like progressive Christian would, try to argue that Jesus is being racist here. And then there'd be some maybe less nuanced perspectives on what's happening here and trying to grapple with it. And so I think it's important to remind ourselves that exactly how a Jew would feel towards Canaanite is not, we can't map it on to our relations as it regards to how we view different races than us, or different ethnicities, or different nationalities. There's similarities or through lines, but there is a fundamental different story, an underlying story at play here that is different than ones we experience today. And so I think about it's important to preempt what Jesus says here with reminding us of the difference between how a Jew would feel to a Canaanite versus how we might feel to a different nation, and replay a little bit of the story of what the Jew thought about himself in relation to a Canaanite or to a Gentile or to any other nation that wasn't one of the 12 tribes of Israel. And ultimately how what they thought is that they were a chosen people picked out by God, right? To be his voice, to be his image, to image God to the rest of creation. And then the rest of creation would come to know Yahweh, the God Yahweh, as the one true God, through Israel. And so at the time of Jesus, as the political entity of Israel is no longer in existence or is subjugated, there is a constant idea of Israel has for God to fulfill his promises, and God has promised that he will reach all nations. He will, he loves everybody, and he's going to reach everybody through this, through Israel. But what is Israel now? Where are they? What's happening? They're under oppression. And this is not anything new for anybody who's listening. And so one of the things, and I've become very convinced of this notion through the work of Dr. Jason Staples. I think he's out of North Carolina State. One of the primary ways that a Jew is viewing the coming of the Messiah is not just the political restoration of Israel, certainly that, but also it is the fulfillment of all the promises that God has made to the people of Israel. And so for God to fulfill his promises to both Israel and the nations, God first has to fulfill his promise to Israel, to resurrect them, to put them on the place that they were always supposed to be, before Israel made all the mistakes they did. And so when Jesus is talking to this woman, I think the dynamic at play is we would naturally feel like, we'd feel a lot of tension about this, because it's like, well, who are they to think like that this is just a Jew thing, or just an Israelite thing, or just for an in crowd sort of thing. But for the Jewish mind, like, there is some racism certainly in what happens and how different followers of Jesus will eventually view the Gentiles. And yet, I think what's at play here is the natural. From the perspective of Jesus, we can see as a natural consequence of what the promise of God has been, is that God is going to come and he is going to reach all nations through the people of Israel. And so when Jesus says what he's going to say about this woman and about what his mission is, I think that maybe is a slightly helpful context. I told Jason to cut me off because I was going to meander for a long time. So I didn't know.
No, I appreciated all that.
Any clarifying thoughts or questions?
The only thing I'd add is just the dynamic of, we don't know anything about the woman other than, what little is said here. We know she has a daughter. It's interesting, how generally speaking, women had little power, little autonomy, little authority. And so it's just fascinating. Like, does this mean she doesn't have a husband, or she has a husband that doesn't care, or this kind of thing? Not because now, and nowadays you'd be like, well, you think she needs a man? Well, then she did, you know what I mean? And so it's like her powerlessness would be high, I would think, generally speaking. And like the woman that touched Jesus' garment, she was trying to get away. She didn't want him to notice that his power went into her, And it's interesting in terms of what would I expect from a single, and keep in mind, I'm assigning her as single, but a single mom in this generation, and then everything else you've described.
Yeah.
It's just, there's an expectation of rejection, which makes Jesus' response intriguing.
It is. And it's super interesting because she seems to know. One, she has some idea. She has some idea about Jesus that would be contrary to what her countrymen / countrywomen would naturally think of a prophet, of a rabbi, of whoever. And so, again, I think Jesus obviously is going to commend her faith. But there are so many obstacles that should be in the way of her being in the place that she is and the time and place she is. And so, yeah, I think this is one of those stories. I think it's really helpful. Like, if you haven't, it's one of those stories that I think it can be really helpful to come in with as much nuance and context, and being open to thinking, I probably am not picking up on some undertones and cultural and religious imagery and ideas that would have been common to them, but it's not so understandable now. Like, I think it's good to go into the story thinking there's probably some things I'm going to miss on this one, which maybe that's a good theory all the time,
right, yeah.
But like specifically with this one, because I think it has become charged for so many people. I think it's probably good to go in with as much humility as possible.
Oh, great setup. Verse 21, Matthew 15. Leaving that place, Jesus withdrew to the region of Tyre and Sidon. A Canaanite woman from that vicinity came to him, crying out, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter is demon-possessed and suffering terribly." Jesus did not answer a word. So his disciples came to him and urged him, "Send her away, for she keeps crying out after us." He answered, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel." The woman came and knelt before him. "Lord, help me," she said. He replied, "It is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs." "Yes, it is, Lord," she said. "Even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." Then Jesus said to her, "Woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted." And her daughter was healed at that moment. So, Connor, what amazes you about this particular interaction?
So I think about the fact that this woman is a Canaanite, which it would have been basically a ancient enemy of an Israelite. These people had been set against each other for quite a long time at this point, and it's hard not to see the beauty in what happens here. That for Jesus to fulfill this woman's request and this woman to have the faith that she has, there's a reunification, there's a unity, there's a making of ways, there is a reordering of things in the way that they were always supposed to be. That is just so beautiful to me and so profound. And there's a scandalous element to the story that we feel now that maybe they might not, original reader or hearer might not have necessarily heard when Jesus made this statement. And yet there is scandal in this story. There is scandal that a Canaanite woman is getting a piece of what the Jewish Messiah has come to deliver. And I think that scandal is such good news for us. And yeah, I just find myself compelled by the beauty of that today.
I like that. I think that, and see, to me, there's sometimes I'm like, am I saying the same thing in every discussion everywhere I go? But noticing the goodness of God in this, and it's so beautiful, and it so defies what the expectation is. I think if you would have been around, so you're just that, you're actor number 12 or whatever, and you're not one of the apostles, you just happen to be there. What happened is hardly noticeable. And it's interesting because it's not, he's going to send her away. Like the disciples aren't even, because first like, oh, they're racist, which they are, they have to be corrected to that multiple times. But it's not even a big controversial thing. Like if you put it today and there's like a person of another race, another nationality comes up and they're asking for something, whatever the corollary would be, and I'm the one in charge and everybody's like, make her go away. That would seem so unkind. But I think this, as you made the case before, this isn't them being like, I'm making a big decision based on nationality. This is just the way life worked for them. And so I do think it's beautiful how he's looking. And I guess the thing that amazes me is it has a similar feel to the rich young ruler. This is what I think Jesus wanted from the rich young ruler, is to push back enough and then still make a decision of faith. The rich young ruler, he's like, hey, here's something unthinkable, that you would turn around and say, I still believe in you after I just told you to sell everything. It's unthinkable that he would insult her and reference these time-honored, prejudices, and her go, no, you're wrong. This is like if the rich young ruler had said, wait, I don't even know how to do this. I don't know how to exist without all this money, but you can help me. I think there would have been a very different interaction. And I don't want to miss, he is experiencing what he experienced. I don't know if we've covered this or I've just taught it recently, but he's like that whole idea of when he honors her faith, there's this sense of amazement, basically. And I think that's just beautiful, that I think he could see this in his mind's eye at the beginning of the conversation. I think his not responding to her, and I think him responding, because he's not even answering her, he's answering the disciples. Look, this is only for them. And then she comes up and confronts him. It's just a weird thing to think about. And I guess I could present it from perplexing side, but this idea of, is God individualizing his responses with you? Or is there just some generic way that God deals with everybody? And this is one of those interactions. I think this is incredibly fine-tuned to this woman's heart, to give her a chance to choose him with resistance, while facing resistance.
Yeah, no, that is really really good. There's one thing my brain went. You had something that sparked something in my mind, and then you said something else that sparked me another. So I need to figure out. There's 2 rabbit trails, and I need to go down just one of them, not try to split the baby on that. Yeah. So what I think a piece of what we're getting at here is the fact that Jesus, we think the victory at the end the sole victory in this is that this woman gets her daughter healed, or her daughter's no longer possessed by a demon, and that is the ultimate victory. But what I love about this is Jesus starts off this conversation, and the disciples being like, this is not your this isn't a thing that you are a part of. This isn't your thing. And I don't remember if you ever had that experience as a kid, whenever you'd see a pickup basketball game or kids playing, and you try to go play, like, oh, I'm sorry,
you're too little.
You're too little. Yeah. No, we already have enough. This is obviously, there's more tension in this than, some elementary school playground. And yet, I think the ultimate win is there at the end of the story. But a just as big of a win is Jesus choosing to engage with this woman. Whereas, not for the first time, but in a documented experience, we have the God of the universe now turning his attention and wrestling with a woman who is outside of the covenant of Israel. And it's like, okay, if you actually if you believe that Jesus is God, then you now see evidence that the God of the universe, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, is now willing to wrestle not just with his people, but with, and again, we have more evidence everywhere, but again, for the disciples and for the people hearing for the first time. And I think it's important for us to recognize that God himself is now engaging and wrestling and struggling with this woman. And honestly, that's more dignifying than if he had just been like, yeah, your daughter's healed, get away. Or, your daughter's been healed, don't worry about it. To actually, for God to engage and to have this back and forth. I mean, this is ultimately like what actually following God looks like. I mean, this is what ultimately a lot of what Israel, like the idea of Israel, is based on, as a people that wrestle with God. And this woman is invited into that as a complete outsider. And one, again, reiterate, that's beautiful. But then also that if we allow it to be, and we allow it to think about what that can mean for how we interact with people and how we invite people into conversation about God, it can truly scandalize us in the best way possible.
Yeah, I would need 10 more minutes to think about. Absolutely. I think there is that scandal. And I guess I'll just jump into what perplexes me is, okay, so let me share a little bit about how I try to encourage people to be disciples of Jesus Christ, and whether that's they've never met him before, they've been following him a long time, but I'm like, hey, I want you to connect with Jesus Christ, you as an individual. And so I don't have a set or canned study that I'm like, oh, you want to talk about Jesus? Okay, class 1, here's what we're going to do. I used to do that. I was taught that way, but I don't do it that way because I know when you present information that's not connected to my story, my retention goes way down, And then it becomes, okay, I've told you the story now. Do you believe it? Now what are you going to do about it? And people I don't see people working that way, And so what I want to know is, what's your story? If somebody comes to our congregation and I'll try to get with them in the first few months they're there, and I'm like, just here's my story, tell me yours. What's your story of faith? And then I'm listening for what has God already started to build there that I can say, here's what I want to encourage. Here's the light I see in you. Here's the giftedness I see in you. Here's the part of Jesus that's in you that you may not realize is unique. I really want to encourage you to lean into that. As we develop trust, often people, not because I'm looking for it, will say things like, I don't believe this part of the Bible, And I'm like, I think that's a pretty obvious part of the Bible. You know what I mean? And I'm not going to give illustrations because I don't know who listens to this, and I've talked to a lot of people, but it's like people will just random things like, yeah, this doesn't fit well. Like this teaching, I don't think it works, or I know they say it's in the Bible, but I just don't live that way. And of course, there were years and years I just assumed everybody believed what I believed because I never gave them safety to say, I don't believe with what you're saying. To my mind, though, I know, number one, I'm off.
Yeah.
Or else I have nothing new to learn. If you say, no, I've got it, then you're like, well, then you're not really a disciple because you're not learning today. Okay, number one. Number two is me saying you're wrong doesn't help anybody. All that does is say, I can't be honest with you. Now, I can say, I don't have that struggle. I really believe that, and I believe it's founded in Scripture, but giving them the grace to grow into it. Why? Because God does, you know? And here's the perplexing piece about this. Jesus just said to this woman, you have saving faith, but she is not part of the covenant. How does he turn around then to the disciples who overhear this? Like, I want that conversation. I want them to go, like back to the rich young ruler when he says, look, oh, it's hard for the rich to be saved. And like, now what? You know? But I think there's a now what to this. And so this is one of my fears is if I bring all these people I'm talking to individually and we have a big discussion in front of the church, and this is something we as a congregation have been working on for a decade, and somebody's like, I don't believe in the virgin birth. I believe in everything else but the virgin birth. And you're like, how could you not believe in the virgin birth? Like, it's pivotal to the story, but I do believe in Jesus and I do believe in the miracles and this kind of thing. It's like, and I've told Jason, and he said that was okay. And I would clarify. I'm like, well, it's not so much I said it was okay. It's just that I realize I have things that say in the Bible that I may say I believe it, but I don't love the love your enemies passage. How often do I really live into that passage? It's still the standard. I just struggle with living into it. And that fluidity of, I don't feel like I'm being duplicitous in saying to the person, if you don't believe it, you don't believe it. You know what I mean? I believe it. And I would encourage you to stay open to God to see what he'd teach you. But I also know if I force you to believe it, then it's not really faith in God. It's fear of me or some other influential thing. And for Jesus to offer, he's offering her a piece of salvation, if you will, at least. And I'm giving you the power of God, not you, but I'm giving your daughter the power of God based on your faith. And if I'm a Jew, I'm like, what? Like, keep in mind, the Jews get mad in Acts 11, not even because Peter offered them salvation, but that he even went in the Gentiles' door. So how is this not incredibly controversial for him to say, your faith has healed you? That to me is perplexing.
Well, and it's very perplexing, especially when you consider the fact that the first thing that we hear that she says to him is basically a confession of faith. Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. Like when she says that, like there's an acknowledgement, like she's gotten the first, your theology 101 or your church 101 class or you're teaching to new people. She's aced that first quiz. Like she's got it. And I think the thing that is such a problem I think the thing that causes so many problems for so many people today is in this moment, that is not that important to Jesus. Like you would think, man, even as a disciple, you'd hear this and be like, wow, people from Canaanite are even seeing that this guy is the son of David. Oh my goodness. There are people from Canaanite picking up on the nuances and are able to articulate who our rabbi is. Like this isn't like, obviously she sucks. We don't like her because she's Canaanite and she's a woman, but like, but still like it's incredible. It's miraculous. And for Jesus, like you could tell a version of the story where this far off Gentile comes to Jesus and says, "Hey, you're the Messiah. You're the son of you're the Jewish Messiah, son of David, all that good stuff." And he'd be like, you got the quiz right. Fantastic. So good. Like you get what you want. You get your candy bar because you answered all the right questions and your daughter is now healed. And yet like that is not that super interesting to Jesus in this story. Like the correct theological answer, like the correct theological perspective that she has is, at least in regards first to his identity, is not the primary point that he wants to push on with her. And I think it is so helpful to remind ourselves that like we stunt our own growth and stunt other people's growth by fixating on whatever our pet theological issues are, whatever they are, that what I'm thinking this moment aligns perfectly with them. And if I'm talking or working with somebody, that what they're working through perfectly aligns with what I feel right now is the most important thing about the Bible and the gospel. And so what is helpful about your perspective about, talking to so many people that will have these one or two issues that are just like, I just don't believe it. I don't get it. What's good about that is what's good about that is they get past the first phase. And again, I'm not trying to map this onto every single interaction that we have now, but they get past this first phase of this woman, of this Canaanite woman, and get to the second phase of wrestling, of the pushback of, somebody says, oh, I don't believe in the virgin birth. And they feel safe enough. And that's not an immediate, for you, that's not an immediate cut the conversation off. Well, we can't do anything else possible until this moment. It's a invitation to further discussion. And really, honestly, her response is so clever and so smart. We haven't even had a chance to talk about that yet.
Sharp.
So sharp and so good. And she's obviously a brilliant person.
Yeah.
And so I think if all that mattered to Jesus was theological correctness, well, one, he wouldn't give us the warning that, many people one day will say, Lord, Lord, did we not do X, Y, or Z for you? But if all that mattered was that the people in your congregation could give the right theological answers, or this one could give the right theological answers, if that was what truly mattered to Jesus, then we wouldn't have had the whole second part of this conversation.
Right. That's exactly right. And I think this is the part, and I want to be really clear. I don't think, man, I've got the high ground on the way I do it. I'm just recognizing when Jesus says the greatest command to love the Lord your God, with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, that means it's always the greatest command, no matter what we're talking about. And I mean, I've had people tell me they don't believe in the creation account. They don't believe in the devil exists. I mean, Christians, people that claim Christ, people I think are really after him to learn, don't believe in the ascension, don't believe in the way, we shouldn't do communion. I mean, I've had all these other things, and I don't typically agree with them. But it comes back to, we're living in a generation now that not living together before you get married is the norm. If you don't have that in your world, you just don't know enough people. And I hate that for them. I don't hate it that it exists in culture. And I hate that exists for those couples, because I think that will do damage to them. Simultaneously, them being in a right marital relationship also doesn't save them. Them thinking the right thing about the Genesis account won't save them, because you could think the right Genesis account and absolutely not love God with heart, soul, mind, and strength, and so that's where I'm coming from. It's is God good at his job? I think God's the best teacher ever. And so for me to say, hey, I think this is what God teaches, you disagree, it's but do you want to love God? Do you want to grow in God? Maybe God's not given me that to teach them, but this is the thing. And in a world that people can now search so easily for very strong opinions, you trying to reach that next generation. I'm not even talking about me as Gen X reaching to, millennial Gen Z. I'm talking about Gen Beta that's not born yet. It's we got to do it like Jesus does. We got to take the person from where they are and say, hey, now it doesn't look like he's inviting her into a conversation, but he knows her well enough to know she's got it in her to work with that or not. She can deny it. Her daughter's not healed, but that anybody I talk to, God's already got to them. You know what I mean? So what perplexes you?
Yeah, I feel like I want to stick on this for just a little bit longer because I think about, I'm drawn to think about, how I teach my daughter about God and about Jesus. I cannot have obviously the same, even though she made a guest appearance on a recent episode. I cannot speak directly. I can't. If I was trying to tell Indigo about what I believe the Bible's teaching about Noah's Ark. There are ways I can phrase it that wouldn't be the classic, exactly how probably most of us were taught on a Sunday morning about what God is doing in that story. But ultimately, I can't necessarily explain to her well, okay, so at the time that the Hebrew Bible was being written, there were many, many different creation accounts. There's this guy there's a certain level that we have to think about in terms of how we teach kids. And so sometimes it just comes down to, this is the way it is. And then the way that I think about with Indigo, I trust that, okay, as time goes on, I'll help peel back the layers, and she'll ask more questions and wrestle. The hard part is I think it's good. I think it's really good to teach my daughter about creation and about how God created in 6 days. The problem is that we feel like what God wants for us is to freeze people in how we framed and how we talked about the Bible, or how we think about God, in terms of how we teach a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old, or we go to the further other end and think, no, that's bad. The way we taught the 4-year-old, that's completely bad and wrong. And what I think you and I both tend to agree on with this, is like, I want to do my best to honor, like, if you're going to teach your kids the literal 6-day creation, exactly, and teach in that way, there's so many beautiful truths about humanity that God reveals in the creation story, and there's so much wisdom, and I think it's one of the most brilliant things ever ever written. And so if you are going to have an understanding about that book that also involves, it was a literal 6 days and it happened exactly 6,000 years ago, it's more important to me that you understand the beauty around that story than like, now this is a narrative about how the cosmology of the universe. Whereas like I would much rather my daughter believe. So I don't believe in a literal 6-day creation. I believe in Genesis, and I believe it's all true. Maybe there'll be another conversation at some point. But I would much rather one day she completely believe just in a literal 6-day creation, and also believe in all the things, all the implications of what Genesis 1, 2, 3, all of Genesis means, and what it says about our relationship with God, and how God feels towards us, and what we can have with him, and what all of this is about. I'd much rather her believe in all of that, and what I would say is probably in what I would ultimately think is not biblically accurate in terms of it being a literal 6 days, than her have the nuanced historical perspective of the Hebrews who were writing these creation accounts in argument with the other ancient creation myths of the day. Like that stuff's good and that's important, but there are underlying truths, and I would much rather her be able to wrestle with those and even get some surface level things wrong. And so that's kind of a long tangent. What are your thoughts? I'll let you jump in there.
Well, the main thing is this, and I go back to it because I don't think even though I've emphasized this for a long time, I don't think I get the depth of it. When Jesus is asked what's the greatest command, now it's a law question. I think that context is important, but when he asks it, the right answer should be, they're all great commands, because whatever God said, those are great things. As soon as he said, oh, this is the greatest, like he did not have to comply and say it that way. But he literally, and then he says, and the second one what? The second greatest command is, and so him using that language, this frees us up, and I think the other thing that is just so much.
That is so good. I just want to pause on that. Like that is a freeing answer. Like we like to think of these things that Jesus gives us, like a command is a binding, something that binds us to a teaching or a rule or a law. And in reality, like that command is the most freeing possible command that he could give us. So sorry, keep going.
And then you say, okay, God, how did you love, like everything, we're doing is supposed to, how did you love Gideon? And why didn't you do this for Gideon? And what about Jonah? And what about Deborah? And then you start to realize he loved them differently. Like he doesn't why don't they give everybody a burning bush? Why don't they give everybody a walls falling down? Why don't they give everybody a giant story? You know what I mean? Where they killed him. He doesn't do anything the same. Why? Because he notices the individual nature that he created. Mm-hmm. He's not coming and homogenizing and saying, okay, I didn't notice your individuality. And see, that's where I think the church largely has got it wrong, and why there's been so much cultural pushback over the last, 50 years. I'm an individual. Well, who said you weren't? God certainly didn't say you weren't. The church kind of said you weren't. The church said it's about saying and knowing the right thing and about behaving the right way, which typically was whatever the culture was at that point, mm-hmm. And I think this is the important piece, is that liberates us. And then the reality is you don't think the same as anybody. Anybody. There is nobody that thinks the same about all the things of God that you do. And I think when we think, our unity is because we agree on how to, quote, do church right, it's already wrong. Like, you do not agree. I'm just saying you've never sat in a building where everybody agreed. It's just people were told, don't bring that up. We can't talk about this. We saw the guy that brought that up 6 months ago, and now he's not here anymore, this kind of thing. And you just learn to defer. And the problem with that is you're supposed to connect with God with the honest you, the whole of your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And if your main worship to God is sitting in a place where you're having to moderate all the time, can't say this, can't think that, can't do this, then you're not giving yourself fully to the worship of God. Yeah. And see, this is the net effect of why I think Christianity is so split, duality of it, where it's like I'm a Christian in this way, but I don't, because it's hard for people to connect with God. And this is such a weird thing to say, if your main diet of God is going to church, because there's the assumption in most churches I've been into, what unites us is what we agree on. Mm-hmm. Not just we're here because we all believe Jesus Christ, Son of God, and his commandment to us is to love each other with these ways.
That's really good. Oftentimes, the church has taken the position that the disciples and even Jesus takes. I don't know if I don't know exactly what his full motivation here is or what's his inner monologue is going on here, but we have so often taken the place of the elementary school bully on the playground, be like, this isn't for you. This isn't your place. This is we look and we are right in our judgment. Oftentimes the disciples and their narrow view of what God is trying to do in the world and humanity, and yet so often for us we fall prey to the same temptation.
That's right. Yeah. So what perplexes you in the 14 seconds I've left?
So this is one of those areas where this is a bigger conversation. So I'm going to try to scale it down a little bit to this. The interaction that Jesus has with this woman is, he replied, she says, "Lord, help me." And then he replied, "It is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs." And then she says, "Yes, it is, Lord. Even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." Then Jesus said to her, "Woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted." So I don't know what the intention that Jesus had at the beginning of this conversation, beginning of this interaction. I don't know if he was always going to heal this woman. Or this woman's daughter. I don't know if she had said something differently, how things would have happened. What I'm led to believe by this specific interaction, if I would just take this in a singular moment, God changes his mind based on our actions and our thoughts. And I have room for that. I've got room for that. And again, I know people have some rejection of that. And there's ways you could get past that with this specific passage. I would say there are other passages where you can't necessarily get past that. But there is a way that God seems to want or allow or be okay or be open to humans to change his plans. And again, I'm not saying that I'm not blowing it up to be bigger than right now than just this one individual interaction. But I do think this is one of those dynamics that we don't take it as seriously as possible. Yeah. To think that, God could say something to me. Like there could be the vocal cords of God could vibrate in a way to communicate a message to me. And I could say, no, God. And then God could be like, okay, we're going to do something different here. This Canaanite woman is obviously brilliant. She's probably smarter than me. But if she has that same access ability to change the mind of God, do I? Do you?
Well, how do you have less?
Yeah.
You're literally clothed in Christ.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, exactly. I don't know how you could reason otherwise. And then the thing is, what scares me about, like, what's the threat if that's true of everyone that has the Spirit of God? Clearly she's not overcoming the will of God, but either you have to say this is simply wordplay, mm-hmm. and Jesus knows she'll push through, and that's why this is a good foil to me, the rich young ruler. It's like Jesus certainly wanted that man to be connected to the gospel and be a follower. And he says, okay, do this. If the man would have said, I don't know. I mean, help me, I'm unworthy. I genuinely think Jesus would have been like, never cared about the money, because the poor you're always going to have with you, and any number of other things that he either said or did. But he allows him to walk away. And would he have allowed this woman to walk away and her daughter continues to be demon possessed? You know what I mean? And this is the other part that perplexes me, is the reputation. It's like on all sides of this, if she goes home, it's like, oh, you allowed a demon to stay in a child? And hey, guess what, true believers? He allowed lots of demons to stay in lots of people, because he left places that there still was needed healing. He left lots of people that needed more food, and left lots of people that needed more, health. And that's the thing, is Jesus trusted God so much, he wasn't scared of his reputation or perception, and that just makes me angry, because I do.
It's funny to think about, if we were, sometimes we'll pray beforehand and pray for specific things, and like if you were to pray for something and you were to feel like in the prayer you were like, you could sense that God was like, not wanting to give it to you, not wanting to answer it in the way that you're like, no, God, like this is the right way. I'd be like, wow, that's a stretch for me, Jason, but okay, I know your spirit, and it's really good.
Yeah.
If I was in a interfaith thing where a Muslim prayed the same, like, no, God, I'd be like, well, let's take a step back here.
Right.
Like, come on. Okay. Like that's a little too far out of bounds. And again, I'm not equating 1-to-1. But the scandal that I would have of somebody who I would not say is not a follower of Jesus, or not a part of the covenant, or however, to suddenly be like, to talk back and to try to wrestle and argue with the creator of everything. I would be astounded, and I would be scandalized. And it's easy. It's not easier. I feel okay with it when it's me. Kind of. I feel,
because your heart.
Yeah. And I feel better about you, because I know your heart. But then to go about the world and be like, this is where, there's that song a long time ago that got really popular, Reckless Love, where you just go like, okay. Like, and there are a lot of people like, no, the love of God is not reckless. But like, I don't know, man. If he loves every single one, he's allowing all people to move him. Like, okay, now that is pretty reckless.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's absurd, and it's beautiful, and it's so many different things. And like, again, I love it. I love the beauty of it for you, and I love it for me, and I love it for the people I know. And man, I want to get to the place where I'm excited that the person, the random person at my work, or the person who's always asking the wrong questions at the opposite end of the pew, or whatever, like to really believe, no, like God honors and values them so much that he is willing to incorporate their thoughts, their feelings, and their plans into his ultimate plan. And that's good news. Until we get to specifics, and then it's like, I don't know.
Well, and this where my brain goes is, there is this role called being God of the universe, and you can say it exists, say it doesn't exist. But for me, I believe it exists, and I believe at my best, I am terrible at that job, terrible, and I believe he's outstanding at the job of being God. And so it's like if I, as a parent, and especially with the age your kid and soon to be, relatively speaking, kid, when you think about that and how many. You do not go, guys, you're missing the physics on this. You know what I mean? And God doesn't have adult children. He just has children.
That's good.
He also has no grandchildren, but that's another story. And it's that idea of, he's like, man, what I think he sees with her is what he sees in me. Man, they want to believe in me. They want me. Man, they're getting it wrong. Man, they're saying it wrong. And they want me. And so I'm there. One
of the most beautiful things I think that can happen to you as a parent is when your own kid has an idea, or like Indigo's now at the age, she's 4 years old and she's turning 5 in December, where like she's not just taking the, because it's the way it is, or because she wants to kind of go back and forth with me. And occasionally, most of the time, when she wants to like argue, or she wants to push back against me, I think I'm like, no, honey, this is just the way it is, because X, Y, and Z, for the reasons that maybe you can understand, and 1,000 other ones that you can't. But then sometimes she has a really good point. And it's like, the other day, we had the first we're recording this at the end of August, and we've had the first kind of like not just hotter than I'll get out phase where it's not 100 degrees out. It's been like 80 to 90. And so it's passable outside. And Indigo wanted to go and play in the sprinkler. And I really didn't want to go outside because there are mosquitoes and I'm a baby and, all those sort of things. And so I was like, no, honey, I think we probably shouldn't right now. And
Jesus doesn't want it.
Jesus doesn't want it, honey. I'm sorry. I talked to him, and no, she was like, and she was like, no, but why? And I go, well, there's just a lot of mosquitoes. And she's like, well, we can put on bug spray. And I was like, we can put on bug spray. And I was like, well, and I was like, okay, fine. Okay, you're right. There's no reason. Let's go outside. And so we played outside for 3 hours and had a great time. And in the midst of that, I had to tell her no, like we couldn't get this out or that out. And so it wasn't, I'm not like a passive parent giving her everything she wants. But one of the joys of her getting older is her perspective of the world. That pushed back against me because I didn't want to be mildly uncomfortable. I was willing to not let my daughter have a joy that she really, really wanted.
And a memory.
And a memory.
Importance of that.
And importance of that. And that's just one single moment. And it is only important in the grand scheme of the universe. It's only important in that. Actually, no, it is incredibly important because all these moments are vital and important. I say all that to say, I look when I'm confronted. I've got better plans for my daughter's life than she has currently right now, and I'm not God,
right?
And I'd be bad at being her God. But there are certain things that she is thinking and ways she is perceiving the world that are challenging my views are for what is best all of the time. And when I get to joyfully go, actually, honey, let's do it your way. I find so much joy when that big smile finally hits of being allowed to be a father that's moved by his children. I like you've always said, God sets this up. He didn't accidentally stumble into the family dynamics. This was all intentional.
Right. And I think, and if you're like, man, that's just bizarre that God would be that considerate of every individual, the answer is, yeah, of course it is. This is David saying, who am I that you, yeah. You know what I mean? If you don't feel this really weird how much God loves me and how much God pays attention to me and every other human, I don't think you're getting it. But when I get, oh, that is so absurd that he would be that attentive to me, I'm like, yeah, that's the first step to understanding how much he loves you and how he wants us to live this life. But if you don't have the sense it's absurd, your faith may need a lot more stretching because you're making it human-sized. And I think that robs us a lot when we just make it human-sized.
So good. I love this episode. This is going to be a jumbo episode. This might be longer. We used to go 50, 60 minutes all the time in the olden days for the OG listeners. And so we're at, before cutting, and I imagine I'll probably cut at least like a minute or two. We're at 48 minutes right now. So we went old school today, but I really loved it. I think it's so good. And yeah, if anybody has any thoughts, questions, concerns, you can always click the link in the episode description to send us a text and ask us a question, make a comment, berate us, or more specifically berate Jason for his incorrect theological views.
I'm at a phase, I need more of it.
Yeah, exactly. Grace, peace, and love.